Hello. This video is about our first 2 weeks when we arrived in France to actually live in our house. So we'd bought the house, we'd travelled around and we'd gone back to England for a while until we got the actual completion date. So we were coming back to France to actually sign for the house and to live here. So what happened was we left our campervan with all our worldly goods in at Rodez airport in the long stay car park there, and we went back to England what we thought was going to be for about 6 weeks, something like that, and it ended up being 4 months that we were there. And so all our belongings were left in the camper van. And so as we were coming in to land at Rodez airport, I remember feeling very worried. I'd been having a few sleepless nights thinking, would all our stuff be okay? It seemed a long time just to park a vehicle up and leave it in a car park. And it's a very open air car park. Anyone can walk into that area. It's not secure at all. And so as we landed, I remember looking out the aeroplane window and saying to Tom, I can see it. So at least it was there. And we went straight over to the camper van. Everything was absolutely fine. It was all as we left it, except we had a completely flat battery. And this meant that for our first bit of time in France, we actually lived in Rodez airport in the car park. And so luckily we had a generator which we'd bought thinking that would be useful. We didn't realise it was going to be useful quite so soon, but we connected the generator up and that was running, I think, more or less day and night, trying to charge the camper van up, because we had an appointment, of course, to go and sign for the house within about 3 days' time. And so we spent a couple of days living in Rodez airport. We kept going to the toilets to fill up with water, bought some food. We got a taxi from the airport to go and open a bank account in Rodez because we knew we needed to open a bank account. We got a taxi another day to go and get fuel for the generator because it had run out of fuel. And we were also trying to be quite low key because we thought you're probably not allowed to live in an airport car park. So we were there was that as well. We were a little bit anxious because it was a country we didn't really know that well, and there was all of that going on as well. Eventually we got it going, and it was the day of signing, so we drove the camper van it's a town called Riperu, which is quite close to us, and that's where the notaire was, and that's like the solicitor in France. And it's a big deal in France. When you buy a house in France, there's a bit more ceremony to it, and it's really quite a nice experience, but very different to the UK. So we arrived at the notaire's not knowing what to expect, and we were in this little waiting room, and our neighbour, or it became our neighbour, who we were buying the house from, he was there, and then the estate agent turned up. She came. And so we were all in the office, so there's the estate agent, the neighbour, us, and the notaire, which is like the solicitor equivalent. And then you have to sign so many documents. It was just signature after signature, and we each had to, well, us and Norbert, who's called, who we bought the house from, we both parties had to sign. And that took a long time, really. So, well, when I say a long time, must have been at least 10 signatures that we had to do on all these different bits of paper, and they kept getting passed, between us. And then at the end of that, everybody sort of shook hands, and it was really quite happy. Nice experience. And then we said goodbye to Norbert, who we'd bought the house from, and we went and got a coffee in the town. We went and had a celebratory cup of coffee. And then we drove our camper van down to our new house, our new home. When we arrived, our neighbours Norbert, who we just brought it from, and his wife Odile, they were there to meet us and showed us where we could park the camper van. And we parked under their window, under the window of their house, and invited us in for a coffee. So we had another coffee and a little bit of chocolate as well. Not much talk, lots of smiling, but not much talking because we couldn't really speak French. Other than the odd word. We'd previously, before we actually moved in, but when we knew we were going to be buying the house, we actually wrote a letter to Norbert and Odile because we were so unable to communicate in any sensible fashion. We decided to write them a letter, but we used Google Translate because that's all we could do, really. And we delivered this letter to them one day when we were looking at the house. And it just explained, it said hello, and we were very pleased to have the house. We were looking forward to living there. and told them a little bit about us, what we did and what we used to do before, our families, and just basic information that you might share when you first met someone normally. And so they'd read all of that. So there had been a little bit of an introduction beforehand, and I think they were also extremely pleased to have sold this little house. Wasn't much of a house really at the time, so I think they were quite happy to have done that and to have some neighbours. They seemed quite up for that really, so that was nice. So it was a lovely welcome. And then we had several things to sort out. So the house, it had a good roof, it had a new roof put on it, but that was about it really. It was just stone walls. It had been used as a carpenter's workshop, so it was full of all his stuff really. Not useful things like tools and things, but lots of bits of wood, different pieces of wood, which I have to say actually were useful. But it was more what a lot of people would call rubbish probably. But we ended up using loads of it in the end. But it was really messy as well. And it had no water, no electricity, no toilet. So our main priority week one was to get some water, because we thought about the electricity and we knew we could manage without that because we had the camper van and that had a solar panel, a little solar panel, but it worked. So we knew we could manage without electricity, certainly to start with. We knew we needed a toilet because we had the camper van toilet, but you've still got to empty that somewhere, and we certainly didn't want to be driving miles just to go and empty the toilet or anything like that. So we knew we had to make a toilet, and we had to get water connected. So that first afternoon we had this drink with the neighbours, and then we went straight off up to the Marys in the town, asked what we do about getting water connected, and they were really helpful. The local, it's like a local council really, I suppose, is the best equivalent. And they are so helpful, and you can go to them for all sorts of things, and they'll tell you, what to do, where to go, or sometimes they can sort it out. And so they got us in touch with the people that we needed to get the water connected up, and a man came to see us within a couple of days. We had water connected within the first week. Before that, our neighbours again let us use, he sort of rigged up a tap that was quite close by, it wasn't too far, and then we used to carry 20-litre tubs of water from this tap, so that's what we were using, and it really connects you up, does that? When you're carrying water, like many people have to do around the world, you realise how heavy that is and how difficult it is. And like I say, we had these sort of 20-litre things we were carrying. It wasn't very far to carry it, but my God, you soon realise how much water you use in a day. It really puts you at least slightly in touch with how a lot of people are having to live and having to carry water long distances. And it is often women that carry the water. So yes, that was a bit thought-provoking. And we only had to do that for a few days, probably just less than a week, I think. So that was good. The neighbours were really helpful with that. And then the other thing we had to do was to make a toilet. So we made a compost toilet. You can see in the picture here, I think. There were 2 big ash trees, and we built the toilet between these 2 trees. So we used them as well, which was helpful. And that was fantastic. So I think by the end of week 2, maybe week 1, it seems a long time to go without a toilet otherwise, doesn't it? So fairly quickly we built that toilet. I remember it was one of the first jobs we did. A contractor came and did the water bit, so we didn't have to do anything with that, whereas we were just on with doing this toilet, so that was good. And I shall make another video about composting toilets, because that's a big thing and it's a great thing. And we used that composting toilet for the first year. It was a whole year before we got a proper toilet connected up inside the house. So we used that for quite a long time, and after that as well. And in fact, we're in the process, we're going to make another compost toilet now. So yeah, big fan of that. What was the other thing? The electricity, yes, we didn't need to do that. And then we spent time that first week really, the other thing we had to do was to get a car, because we had no car, and we decided that, you couldn't drive around in the camper van. It was really on its last legs anyway. So again, our neighbours helped us to get a car. They drove us to the garage basically, and we managed to get a little Peugeot. I think it's a Peugeot 205, I'll check on that. And it was a brilliant little car, and so we got that. I think it was about €1,000, which seemed a lot to us. Second-hand cars in France are quite expensive compared to the UK. So we were hoping to get something maybe for 200 or 300 like you could at that time in England, but no, it was €1,000. But they did such a lovely job in the garage. They really sort of, it was just an old car, but they really sort of polished it all. When we went to pick it up, it was all so nicely prepared, and he showed us around the car and how everything worked, as if we were buying something really expensive. And so that was a really lovely experience, actually, to be sort of treated well like that, even though in their eyes we weren't buying. They sold lots of other nice cars, and this was what actually, you know, quite an old one and everything, but to us it was great. So we'd got a car by the end of week 2, I think. And the other thing we did, of course, because we'd created the compost toilet, we had to create a compost heap, so we did that as well. I remember Tom was doing a lot on the toilet and I was making a compost heap, which I was pretty, what can you say, I wasn't that proficient at it, I would say. I remember I hadn't done loads of practical things before we arrived, some things, but I remember, like, you know, how to use the drill, and all I was trying to do was connect a few pallets together, but and clear a space and everything. And it's funny, just thinking back to that time makes me realise how much I have learnt and how much more practical I am now, just from having to do things. And that feels good. I like that. I like all the practical aspect of living here. It's enjoyable. So yeah, so we built the compost toilet and the compost heap. And then it was just on with, we was trying to sort out drainage as well, because our house is at quite a lot of risk from flooding. And so we were also putting in some drainage channels at the same time. So it was a really busy, those first few weeks here were very busy. We had sort of 7 weeks between, we got our house on the 10th of October 2012. We had 7 weeks before we went home for Christmas that year, so we were trying to do as much as we could in that time, and we did plan out a real schedule. We really sort of planned everything out and what we were going to do, and didn't always achieve it, didn't always stick to it, but it kept us going and we knew what we wanted to do. So we were really quite switched on in those first few weeks, maybe more switched on than we've been since. So but yeah, and there was that feeling of like, we want to create a home. We don't really want to live in the camper van here any longer than we have to. So we were very motivated as well. And the other thing we got done was we got a telephone line connected to the house, which was really weird because the house was, like I say, not much of a house. And the guy came to connect the telephone, and I could see him thinking, why am I connecting a phone to this shack really, or this barn-like building? But that made a huge difference to us, because then of course it was so much easier for us to be in contact with our families and friends, but particularly families and children in the UK. So once the phone was connected in the house, then we ran a wire across to the camper. Well, we just had a really long cord on it, so we could take it to the camper van, which we eventually moved in front of the house. So yeah, so we could be in the camper van and on the phone, which was great. So it was really good, actually. Those first 2 weeks were so exciting. You know, that feeling of just being in a new place, a new country, and it was all very exciting and yet hard work as well. But yeah, that was our first 2 weeks in our house at France, or near our house. We weren't exactly in it, we were parked next to it. Yeah, and if you like these videos, there's a couple more here you can watch if you want to, and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to get notified when videos go in. I'm doing new ones. I'm doing 2 a week about life in France and about other things as well, and about living a more simple life. Okay, lots of love. Have a good week. Bye.